you doing? You know, I meant to put my jacket on. I'm going to blame it on sleep deprivation. Good evening to my friends in South Florida there. I don't know if you remember. I certainly remember. There's some things I've kept track of for many, many, many years, and one of them is advanced lithium-ion batteries. And of course, there's the issues with conventional lithium-ion batteries. I even wrote the article for Apple on how to take care of lithium-ion batteries. The two primary things, there's really four things. The two bad ones are no fast discharges, draining them really, really low. That's the second one, really, is draining them really, really low. No deep discharges, which you can actually get away with a few times. But do you remember that, like even 100 amp hour lithium batteries, lithium-ion batteries, were right at 1,000 up until just recently? Yeah. Well, the technology is there's actually quite a bit of labor in producing one, even though they've come down a whole lot. I, by the way, get a discount if you actually check the link below on getting one of these batteries, because they just went on sale. But I actually put my money, and my batteries were not on discount when I bought mine. These Power Queen batteries, these are the best for the money. Currently $479, and that's not for a 100 amp hour lithium-ion battery. I'd like to talk about a few things and actually put everything into a really tight nutshell very quickly. By the way, I have a couple of them back here. I've also too got a couple of them at the cabin. This is the size of them right here. About the size of almost 4 shoe boxes. Now these are lithium iron phosphate batteries, or 200 amp hour batteries. And there's actually four, not only the best battery for the money, 200 amp hour, they're lithium iron phosphate. They're actually much, much safer on, you don't have issues with puncturing, and you don't have the issues with swelling on the lithium iron phosphate batteries. There's serious issues for people that talk about their off-grid locations or cabins that they're worried about. If it was in a log cabin, it was a conventional lithium-ion battery that that it would burst and totally take out their cabin, and that's not an issue on these lithium iron phosphate batteries. By the way, these, like all the rest of the current much more expensive lithium iron phosphate batteries, are prismatic lithium iron phosphate batteries, or my buddy likes to humorously call them LiFePO batteries. And by the way, I have a link below for an additional 4% off. So that particular one, the 12.8 volt or 12 volt 200 amp hour Power Queen battery, is $479. I put my money where my mouth is back when I used to do tons and tons of gear reviews. And this, of course, I guess you could call is a gear review. Even the people that didn't like me knew that I was actually making honest recommendations on stuff that I actually myself spent money on. My buddy, by the way, I have a cabin up in the woods. My buddy's cabin is just down from mine. He's running his entire cabin off of just one of these 12 volt 200 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries, and his fridge is perpetually plugged in. He's running his vacuum cleaner and his refrigerator and his TV and his lighting all at once. Now, he has 640 watts on the outside. Fundamentally, a lot of people are actually getting intimidated by setting up a power grid, or they want something that they could use stationary at the house for emergency battery backup, but something too that's very collapsible and you could actually take on the road. Now, this battery is 44 and a half, I'll just basically say 45 pounds. And I have a Renogy 2,000 watt inverter on top here. You don't actually need that. And of course, you're limited on the bus system that you actually have on the battery. You don't need, for most things, a 2,000 amp, a 2,000 watt inverter. Also, too, the Renogy ones are quite expensive. 1,000 watt is about half this size, and I have quite a few. But you need your battery, your inverter, and your charge controller, and your solar panels. 200 watts, of course, it depends on the amount of light you have, and they're talking about a total discharge. Now, if you had basically a total discharge in one of these 200 amp hour units, if you had 200 watts of solar panel, which is actually 2 of these, this is the foldable ones. Each side of this, I don't want to open it up here in front of the camera, each side of this is 50 watts. So this folds in 2. This is a 100 watt foldable solar panel. I think these are like 11 and actually less than that. I think like 8 or 9 pounds. That is roughly right at $200 worth if you had 2 of those. Basically a buck a watt, and of course the foldable ones are more expensive than the rigid solar panels, regardless who makes them. By the way, I think there's only 2 manufacturers of these babies, but there's like 5 or 6 different names that they slap on them. So I actually completely ignore the name that they put on these foldable 100-watt solar panel briefcases. I think there's only 1 or 2 people that actually produce those. The total cost to be sovereign and independent on something that you could use in-house, or I want to show you something really important in a second on a charge controller and how cheap these are, and they're on discount, and I have a link for that below as well. I put my money where my mouth is. I actually paid full price, so if you actually purchase one of these charge controllers, you'll be getting it cheaper than what I paid for it. But I get some bunny points, which actually lets me purchase more solar, and I want to purchase one additional 200 amp hour battery for my off-grid cabin location. But that being the case, once again, I don't make any recommendations based on, well, I'm going to post an affiliate link and I'm going to get a kickback or this or that. I mean, is that a form of compensation? I mean, I will be 100% honest and forthright with you and say that that is the case, but I would never ever recommend something that I myself have not put my own money into and stand behind 100%. And I paid full price on these, and if you actually buy one while they're on sale right now, you'll be getting them cheaper than I myself paid. So I want to show you this charge controller in a second. By the way, you want to get onto that in a second on the Renogy. Say if you have 200 watts of solar power, which is 2 of these briefcase units, and you're receiving 5.5 hours of sunlight, and then of course that depends on the angle of incidence and how powerful the sunlight is, generate 1,000 watt hours of energy per day, given that a 12 volt 200 amp hour battery like the one behind me that I'm recommending you purchase. By the way, you know this used to be like $1,500 and now you can get it for $479. If that sounds like a sales pitch, I'll concede that, but it's not. I mean, that's incredibly cheap for 200 amp hours of lithium battery. Now, and a lot of people also too forget, you can buy like the golf cart batteries, and I have a couple of those that I basically don't use anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them to a person. 300 amp hours of lead acid. It's like, well, that's a lot more than 200. Actually, it's a lot less, and people never consider that. It's like, well, 300 amp hours, you got 2, and they're really, really, really heavy. 75 pounds a piece, so you got 150 pounds. I mean, they'll just about, they'll do you in to move them. They really will. It's like, well, that's 300 amp hours. I got 2 of those. That's way more than one of these, which is 45 pounds for 200 amp hours. Actually, it's a lot less. I don't know if you know what the percentage you can actually drop a sealed lead acid or SLA, or just like we call here in the South, the lead acid battery. Even though these are deep discharge lead acid golf cart batteries, which is huge usage on off-grid for solar power storage, it's a lot less. That equivalent 300 amp hours of gut-busting, super heavy 2 golf cart batteries, so 300 amp hour total, you're looking at somewhere right around 160 amp hours. So infinitely heavier at 150 pounds versus 45 pounds for one of these. So you got 150 amp hours effective usage on 300 amp hours roughly. 300 amp hours of lead acid versus this 45 pound lithium iron phosphate battery. Yeah, you have, take approximately, if you totally discharged one of these, which you shouldn't do, 2.5 days with 200 watts of solar to fully charge the battery. But on a typical usage, of course, it depends on what kind of load you put on it and how much you drain per day. The next day, if you wake up at, say, 9:30 or whatever, you may be right at roughly at about, on a typical load of off-grid usage, your batteries, your fans, recharging your cell phones and your iPads and running off your computer endlessly, all to your heart's content, and your lighting, on and on and on, your mini fridge, it would be back recharged again, assuming you're not using the battery and putting a load on it until, like, say, 10:30 or 11. You can have your coffee and your breakfast. Then it's already essentially recharged. And now, of course, there are many variables on the angle of incidence, intensity of light, how much solar you have, but this is assuming 200 watts of power. Ultimately, you only need 4 things. Of course, you need the lithium iron phosphate battery here at $479. $200 for 200 watts of folding solar. $150 for 1,000 watts, which is all you need for most things, okay? $150 for a 1,000-watt inverter. I want to talk about this charge controller over here and show you something important. $60 for a 30 amp hour MPPT charge controller, and $470, technically $479 for one of these. The total is $870, another $30, $40 of cables. You're looking at $900 if you want to put in brackets and whatnot, add another $100. $1,000 gets you sovereign independence for running most things, not your hair dryer, not your heating system. Okay, run your air conditioner for a little while, but not for very long. You have to be pragmatic about what we're talking about here. However, running fans, you don't need to run an air conditioner. You're talking about, staying comfortable. To run your fans, to run your computer nonstop, your iPad, your iPhone charging, your mini fridge perpetually nonstop, your LED lighting systems, so that you can see and read. Once again, my buddy powers his entire cabin off just one of these 200 amp hour lithium-ion batteries. By the way, the links are below. I do not recommend anything that I myself have not put my own money into. Do I get some bunny points so that I can get a discount on buying an additional one of these for myself and 2 additional charge controllers, one of them for my dad? The answer is yes, so I have full disclosure with you on that. Yes, I do get a few bunny points, but I put my money where my mouth is on this, and even if you don't like me, I'm honest about that. So right at $900, plus or minus, depending if you build a bracketing system, whatnot. I actually built, it's like a $10 board. I should have brought it in here. I have everything other than the battery. I have everything screwed to a board, the inverter and the charge controller, and I screwed on 2 little $3 wheels on the bottom and a little rope handle at the top, so everything, along with all the cabling, you can pull on a wheel, it's all on a board, you can slide it in your car or your truck, or you can pin it up against a wall, your refrigerator, and lean it up against your kitchen and have the cabling going outside to your solar panels, so you're recharging your battery that way. Actually, it's a brilliant little setup, and that only costs $15. A board, 2 little wheelies, you screw your inverter and your charge controller there, and of course your battery is, separate, it's right there, and your solar, of course, is outside. And these, I can't remember, I think these are like 8 or 10 pounds. I want to talk about, this is also too by Power Queen. Charge controllers. I have a lot of charge controllers. By the way, this is, I think it's currently $289. This is the MPPT, which is, of course, means maximum power point tracking. These charge controllers are advanced controllers with a minimum efficiency of 92%, and, of course, feature electronic protections and adaptive charging. This will actually handle a maximum at 12 watts of solar input of 800 watts of solar. Okay, now this is a 60. It's $289 currently, I believe. You don't need that for one of these batteries and 200 watts of solar, and it's really heavy too, by the way. I have the link below for this, and by the way, the Renogy example of this currently is $130. It is an MPPT 30 amp charge controller. This is also too a 30 amp MPPT charge controller with a maximum 12 volt input of 400 watts of solar, or 800 watts at 24 volts of solar. This one actually comes with a lot of stuff, really clear instructions, unlike Renogy. This is the same thing. By the way, all this stuff down here, you don't need a Bluetooth, and you don't actually need a remote access for this. All you have to do is hook up your positive and negative on your photovoltaic and your battery, plus and minus right here. You don't need to hook up the load. You don't need to hook up the temperature sensor. There are uses for that. I'm not getting it in this video. You don't need a wireless Bluetooth setup. So everything down here is really simple. Positive and negative on your solar panel, screw it down. Positive and negative on your battery, screw it down. By the way, you always hook up your batteries first. You don't hook up your solar to your charge controller, because otherwise, without having you hook your batteries up first, because it's dumping energy into this, and it doesn't have anywhere to go, so you burn up your charge controller. A lot of people make that mistake. It's extremely stupid. But it's really simple. You can teach a blind person how to do this. There's only 4 buttons here, too. You tell it what sort of battery you have. It's like, okay, I got 200 amp hours of lithium-ion battery. In this case, it's the lithium iron phosphate, not lithium-ion, lithium battery. It actually just registers lithium. The profile for the charge controller to know what to do and when to cut off charging is identical between lithium-ion and lithium iron phosphate. So this is really, really foolproof simple. Positive, negative, solar, positive, negative battery. So with this, 2 of the briefcase units of solar with 200 watts, a power inverter, and right now the actual Power Queen 1000-watt inverter is really cheap. Yeah, this one currently is $61. I missed the most important point on this. Currently $61.40 with the discount code in the link below. Do I get bunny points once again? Yes, I do. It's full disclosure. I got nothing to hide. I put my money where my mouth is. I paid my own money for this. The batteries in my cabin and my Power Queens here. Okay, put my money where my mouth. $61. The Renogy one, which is exactly the same, it's actually nowhere near as good. And you can see the cooling vents back here. The Renogy one, exactly like this, 30 amp MPPT, is twice as much, $130. This one is $61 currently. It's much smaller, simpler. It actually comes, and I don't have the little baggie of all the stuff this comes with and the wonderful instructions, but it's actually really nice. So $61 for this, $479 for one of the 200 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries, $150 for a 1000-watt inverter. A 1000-watt inverter is essentially half the size of this 2000 watt here, roughly half the size. So you need 4 things: 200 watts of solar, $150 for your inverter, $60 for this charge controller, which I have the link for below, $470 for the battery, add another 30 to 50 of cables, depending on the bracketing technology you do or don't want to add to it, which is a simple DIY. You're looking at $900 to have an independent system to go wherever you want. It's either at your house, at your cabin, mobile, the smallest, you know, those little putt-putt cars, beep beep, you know, really tiny and they're extremely laughable. All of this stuff would fit in the back of one of those type of vehicle with plenty of room left over. The only thing that's any weight, and it's only 45 pounds, is a 200 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery. This weighs, what, about 6 pounds, total of about 20 pounds on the foldable solar. That's $200. About 10 pounds on your power inverter. No. Most 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries have a maximum discharge rate, including this one, of 100 amps continuous due to the BMS, which is the battery management system. So you can actually do 2 of these in parallel and allow for a maximum current of 200 amps. Yeah, mini fridge, electronics. You can't run your hairdryer. You're not running, you know, your dryer, which takes a lot of power. You can run your vacuum cleaner, your shop vac, which is what my buddy does. He's running with one of these batteries at the same time, and it's constantly running, keeping cool his mini fridge. It's actually a medium fridge. There's one, it's about this tall. This is a mini fridge right here. There's a medium-sized fridge, which is about 30% bigger. I'm sorry I don't have one here in front of you. You know what a full-size fridge is, of course. You know what a mini fridge is, like the ones you see at hotels. There's a medium-sized fridge. You can run that continuously, non-stop, as long as, of course, you have solar to keep the battery charged in the daytime, even when it's overcast and dark in the wintertime. That continuously is running his shop vac, all his LED lighting in the cabin, his TV and his DVD player where he's always watching movies. Basically everything he needs. Of course, he has a wood-burning stove. You know, it's not going to run a heater, it's not going to run your dryer. I mean, it will, but not for very long. But anything that you primarily need to charge all your iPads and all your little e-devices, and run your TV and your lighting and your fans. Like, you know, you're going to be running an air conditioner. You can, but not for very long. So, You have $479 on the battery with the discount code below, and that's currently a sale. That is, you couldn't even get a half of a 100 amp hour lithium battery back in the day for 500 bucks. This is $479 for this sucker, 45 pounds, 12 volt, 200 amp hour lithium iron phosphate, or as my buddy humorously loves to call them, LiFePO batteries. I put my own money where my mouth is on this. I don't recommend anything, once again, that I don't actually truly believe in. Because there's so much stuff out there, it's just blindless shilling. Blindless affiliate linking. It's like, well, you know, maybe I get some money off this. I'm not getting any money off of this, okay? It's bunny points towards a discount on me purchasing another one of these and a couple more charge controllers. My dad wants to put a solar system on his house because power keeps going out. Things get worse on the electrical grid. You know it and I know it. I've had more power outages here this year than I've had basically my entire life here. And about that, if I'm lying, I'm dying. It's been infuriatingly awful. It's been unbearable. Being sovereign is important, and so you're not going to run everything, but with two of these, of course, you can run a lot. But with one of these, you know, other than your dryer and, you know, you can run your microwave too, but you're not going to run your air conditioning system, you're not going to run your heating system, you know, you're not going to be running, you know, major power draw items. I mean, the reason why, like a whole solar setup to solar outfit a house to make it completely independent of the grid is many, many tens of thousands of dollars. Many, many, many. That's because it has an enormous amount of batteries. The solar, not that expensive. You get down to, on regular rigid panels, to 75, 70%, even a little bit cheaper per watt. It's the batteries. You know, you can run cheaper systems using lead acid, but, you know, lead acid doesn't have the discharge profile of lithium iron phosphate does. So 300 amp hours of sealed lead acid is a lot less usable power. Keywords being usable power. An enormous amount less usable power than one 200 amp hour lithium iron phosphate. And that's something, one among countless things that people fail to consider in thinking about solar. Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about, and these are a great deal. I said 400 watts of 12 volt solar input, and it is an MPPT, and it's only 61 bucks, and it is relatively small and lightweight and very well built. And $479, which is what you can get one of these for below behind me on the link. For 200 amp hours, I mean, it wasn't just a couple years ago that lithium ion, just regular lithium ion battery was right at $1,000. That was a 100 amper. So for half that much, you have twice as much power, and it is a prismatic lithium iron phosphate. So put these down in the cabin. You're not worried about, you know, burning your remote location down. Okay, you're not worried about, you know, slightest puncture, like, oh, it's swelling. You know, it's going to take down my whole off-grid location, which is a serious concern on old technology lithium batteries, but not a lithium iron phosphate. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. The links are below. I'll actually pin it below, but it also too is in the description below. And you know, I'm not getting kickback money, you know, from discussing these things in this video. I am not a greenie, by the way. You know, someone's worried about cow flatulence and you know, I'm not at all in the green movement, but being independent of demand, should say, demand. Solar is really easy to hook up. I mean, it really teaches a blind person how to do it. I mean, you really can. You got your solar panels, your inverter, your charge controller, and your battery or batteries. You hook them all together really quickly, believe it or not. Where you mount them at, that takes more time. You know, my little mounting brackets. If it's on a mobile situation, these, you know, they actually have a kickstand, like on these briefcases. There's a lot of different places to get these. Many different names are all by the same company or one or two companies. It's very easy. I'm not a greenie at all, but being independent and not having an electrical bill at my cabin, but I mean, I'm running my speakers and I'm playing my music and I've got my lighting on and I'm playing, got my fan on when it's hot at the cabin. and I can run my ice maker. I got one of those little $89 ice makers that you pour water in. Doesn't take up much power. When you have a fan on your face and you're drinking, you know, whatever, your water, whatever it is you like to drink, with some nice big pile of ice cubes in it, you are cool, even if it's 90 degrees outside. That's very nice. And I love that. And it has nothing to do with being green. It has to do with independence and not having an electrical bill at my cabin. It's like, well, I've got electricity at my cabin, but I got no electric bill. And, you know, I know how to set this up, and so being independent is important. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely week. Okay? Goodbye.